well, welcome to anybody who's here. And the and as many of you know, it's the application process is very challenging. So if you made it through the application process, it's especially it shows how much you're devoted to the work locally. Want to go to the next one? We'll send out an email to confirm all this. We're saving, we should have probably reversed these. We have general office hours coming up as usual, once a month. We're going to be talking about collaborating with residents. I'm hoping to ask Amy, who's to talk about using data chats, and we're thinking about the format, whether we need to have, whether it's better to have multiple examples and a discussion or one example to focus on. We're figuring that out, but we have a data chat guide that Amy is one of the co-authors on that I'm super excited to share with all of you. It's in design work right now, so it should be done by the end of the month to really talk through, to share their really successful model of how to bring data to resident groups. And then finally, we are planning a partners meeting here in DC in person. The dates are set. It feels like a big leap of faith on how the world is going to go. We are working on settling hotels. We'll be reaching out to people. This is based on, we made the decision based on the survey that you filled out. Elizabeth, I think, administered it about where people's sort of temperature taking was on travel. But we have gotten permission. It will be held here at the Urban Institute. So we're very excited to share a beautiful space with you here. And the DC would be the local host. So you can see amazing things from the 11th Street Bridge Project and the work that Leah and Elizabeth and Peter do on the other side. They're wearing their other hat as a local partner. So it would be wonderful to see everyone again and to sort of have that sort of magical togetherness that's there. So we'll be sending more information out. Definitely at least a save the date and then more logistics too on that. And then I have it's kind of, it just jumps in there. Noah, I'm in charge of congratulating and awarding Noah the Network Steward of the Year Award. So this is an award that actually Bob Graddick created many years ago when he was on the executive committee, because we talked about how much we value the contributions to the network. And we celebrated sort of your local everyday work, but not the inward looking contributions that folks made. And somebody asked me on the executive committee whether it was like, is this just for 1 year or a lifetime award? And for Noah, it can be both. So Noah is someone we've turned to over and over again for more than a decade for wisdom and help and encouragement and guidance. So this both reflects the work he's done in the past year as well as long term. And just to give you a sense of like how diverse the work is, he's communicated with other local stakeholders. When we've had Michigan Municipal League ask for help, he and Grand Rapids jumped in. They have been collaborating with us on connections to national funders. He's coordinated and partnered with many of you on the call in Grand Rapids and San Antonio and DC, sort of on the bread and butter local work. Data Driven Detroit and NOAA in particular are so generous sharing examples. Most recently on the census, but all the time. And then Noah also served on the executive committee back then. And thank you to Jeremy and others who gave their comments in the latest survey to lift Noah's helpfulness up. I actually forget the agenda. There's moments for Noah to say something.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, just thank you, everyone. It's really humbling, and I guess I first got introduced to NNIP back in 2014 when I was like a fresh little junior analyst at Data Driven Detroit. And if you had asked me then if I would be, I guess, one, a co-executive director, but also two, like getting a Network Steward of the Year award, given that I was originally a very quiet, shy introvert at that meeting. I would have probably rolled my eyes and laughed a little bit. But I think it's just a credit to the tremendous people in the network. I learned so much from all of you over the past 8 years, and I look forward to hopefully learning so much more. You're all wonderful, and it's great to be working with you.
And a good pathway for anybody who's just started and is early career staff at any of the NNIP partners. You can stay involved with the part of the joy of NNIP is the longevity of our relationships. So thank you very much, Noah. It does come with a plaque and that you can hang in the D3 walls when if you get back to the office, and covering the hotel rooms for the meeting for a staff person. So as part of the reward, which is not we know is a small token compared to the contributions. So thank you, Noah. And the next announcement.
It's my turn. I have the pleasure of announcing this year's G. Thomas Kingsley Impact Award recipient. I know we are getting to a point where there are people on the call who don't know Tom, but Tom was the founding director of NNIP and really served as an inspiration for all of us, and was very committed to NNIP and its members, and to writing up the stories of impact that they had on the contributions. So this award is for the contributions using neighborhood data to improve local policy and practice in order to benefit people with low incomes and communities of color. So I can, thank you, Kathy, for dropping in the link if you want to learn more about Tom and his legacy to the network. But this year I am excited to announce that we have awarded via our selection committee, Innovate Memphis, for their application. They presented a portfolio of projects that were focused on housing instability in Memphis during COVID. They were collaborators on the design and evaluation of the eviction settlement program and helped target outreach of emergency rental assistance funds, as well as doing a household survey in select neighborhoods with community partners and process-oriented evictions court research. They're really involved in many aspects of this work and were noted as thoughtful contributors and well-respected by other stakeholders in the community. And they were able to assemble data for this work across a very fragmented system in Shelby County, the city of Memphis, independent judges within the courts, who all didn't really have any accountability to each other. And this data helped the program to do very targeted outreach to keep people stably housed in this important, during this important time. And in addition to responding to the crisis, Innovate Memphis has helped to lift up systemic issues facing vulnerable people and neighborhoods in Memphis and supported better targeted advocacy. So we have Altonio Smith here today to accept the award.
Hey, Leah, thanks so much. On behalf of our executive director and former past executive directors, Justin Arnsminger and our current acting director, Courtney Mahone, we, humbly accept this award. So a lot of thought has gone through the process of, being purposeful of what we do here in Shelby County and what we want to engage and move the needle with, as we would say. And being very, like I said, purposeful in how we want to approach things here when it comes to advocating for change in our communities. And we know that here in Shelby County, more so than anywhere else, that we have an issue with housing instability, more so than anywhere else in the country. And if you're studying evictions across the country, you know that Memphis has higher numbers than anywhere else across this region or across the country. So we felt like it was a destined purpose of us to say that we want to get involved and be engaged, and the things that can assist with, stabilizing our housing market in a manner of providing a place for, healthy, more vibrant living for our citizens that are here in the community. So we're getting initiatives to start looking into things on how we can engage local municipalities and the citizens across Shelby County, and how we can develop some initiatives in regards to providing more stable housing to our constituents across the board. So very, very proud of our works and whatnot in this element, and very pleased to receive this award on behalf of G. Thomas Kingsley. We hope that we can live, read, and live on, his great works as we move forward with our additional works throughout here in Shelby County, Tennessee.
Thanks, Tony. And we'll have you share a little bit more about your work in a moment.
Okay.
I'm going to kick it back to Elizabeth, I think.
Yeah, thank you, Kathy and Leah, and congratulations to both Noah and Innovate Memphis. Apologies on ruining the award winners 2 years later, and I still can't figure out how to chat when I'm sharing screen. But we'll start off our presentations today with Altonio Smith from Innovate Memphis. Austin, unfortunately, can't join us today. And then we'll go on to Jessie Partridge from Boston, presenting on their speculative housing research, and finish out with Sarah Diez from the Kinder Institute in Houston, presenting on the City of Houston's Equity Indicators Report. And we'll follow all presentations with one question and hold the rest till the end and have a discussion then. So thank you. I'll pass it off to Altonio.
Thank you so much.
And I'll just say, anyone can put questions in the chat as we go along. We just wanted to make sure that we don't run out of time like often we do. So.
Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So we thought about how we want to present today as far as scaling this down from all the works that we've done, but we really kind of thought about pivoting into this Robert Woods Foundation kind of works that we did last year, and kind of tying it all together, because it's all relatable from the backside of like, what do we do as far as, creating an equitable environment when it comes to housing and the issues that are related to it. So the survey aspects of the works, as it states here, the Community Information Housing Stability Data Action Program with place-based organizations. I know it's long, lengthy name, but we try to encapsulate all that it was about. And we did this in partnership with Whole Child Strategy, a great thought partner of ours here in the community here in Shelby County, and part of the Civic Commons. So it's a conglomerate of 9 nonprofits that are really focused on some of these housing, community-based issues, specifically in certain segments and demographic areas across Shelby County. So we want to thank them for being a great partner of ours. We want to thank Urban Institute. We want to thank our direct thought partners with, as far as specific names, with Leah and Jake and Sonia, as you guys help us parse out those different aspects of information. And you guys were available to us, and that was a key part of being a sounding board. I always say that, it takes a village, and it definitely does, to really kind of impact and move change. So we're very grateful for your guys' input as we went through this process of culminating and bringing these things together. So today I want to talk about kind of tying those pieces together and relatable to this screening and how housing, some of the issues. And I'm not going to talk very long. I don't have much of a window, but I really kind of want to summarize some of this work and some of these things and how it kind of impacted us and what we came out with on the backside of this works as we went forward to like pushing some of these initiatives. So here's the agenda today. I'm just going to do a project summary really quick and then open up for any questions that you may have. So let's see. Once again, I want to acknowledge Innovate Memphis, Whole Child Strategies, and of course, Nadine's not here. She's about user experience and anthropologist, but she moved on, took another job, and of course, Austin couldn't be here today because of an emergency issue. But I really want to thank them for their hard work and effort. I couldn't have done it by myself. Just some minor cog in the wheel, and of course, Justin with his leadership, over my tenure here. So it's been a great conglomerate of works to pull these endeavors together. Thinking about this concept of this work here specifically with this survey and how it pulled together, I really want to kind of give a backstory of like the housing condition here in Shelby County as relates to evictions. Coming out of 2019, you know, as they say, it was a dark, cold world for us here in Shelby County. Evictions numbers were out of the roof, and then coming into 2020, we anticipated them being a lot worse. But those numbers actually declined probably about 58%. We went from about 10,000 judgments down to about 4,513 from 2019 to 2020. And we contributed some of those evictions, that downslide to COVID. You expect those to be going up, but also the works behind the eviction settlement fund, which you heard Leah mention previously when she introduced some of our works. The Eviction Settlement Fund was brought into play by a partnership with MPI and the city and county here in Shelby County, and Innovate Memphis as being a technical lead on some of the projects as we pull things together from an evaluation standpoint and bring in data to analyze and provide transparency with the program. So some of the outliers from that program was bringing in these additional monies from the national level into Shelby County that can help ward off evictions and stabilizing our housing market here in Shelby County. So with the help of that first wave, it was 1.7 million. We ended up saving probably over roughly about 1,500 localized households, and that number increased to close to over, as it is right now, close to about 50,000. So and then we're probably, that number that's paid out for as funding is probably close to this second, third wave that we're going into, is close to over $52 million in monies that have been paid out. So very happy about that program as it ties into the foundational elements of what that issue is here in Shelby County and providing some segue of relief when it comes to evictions and warding those things off. When it comes to this research, this was factually founded on a survey that was committed with the Commons, and it was with 8 coalition-based, community-based organizations providing some insights when it comes to housing stability as we do this work and as we went about it. So we looked at several things: housing, socioeconomic impacts. We looked at evictions. We looked at income levels. We look at job placements, disbursement. We look at unemployment numbers and all those things as to kind of tie together and piece together this foundation element of our data. This up. We went through a process of screening about 410 Memphians across Shelby County, and we got a response rate about 51%, which, as you know, as you do these things, not everybody likes doing these surveys. So we try to be very purposeful how we wanted to approach it as far as, you know, digitizing it and then streamline the process. We use Sicario to like touch base with all of them through this phone app-based application. And then of course, they were able to click on this link and then go online and take the survey from a cell phone or tablet or desktop computer or laptop or what have you, as far as interacting with this survey. So 51% survey response rate, and we were able to engage with them in a manner during the middle of the pandemic and leverage some of this information content for the survey. So what we started to learn was, once again, this housing instability, how is it related to these issues with health and employment, and what are people most vulnerable as they came out of this pandemic or going into the middle of it. As Jeremy kind of talking on this, like some of the most pressing issues here in Shelby County is, even without COVID, was related to housing instability. So the pandemic, looking at these issues, localizing it, kind of dissecting as we went through this process of how are people really kind of faring as they go through this pandemic, and what do they look like as they begin to kind of transition out of it in 2020. So we were able to engage with them, come up with some pretty rich data. I'm not going to go through a lot of it right now. If you want information content from this survey and this project that we created, I'll drop it in the link or I'll email it to you directly. So what we also found out that 4 out of every 5 respondents reported that they did have an issue in their housing. And it was a real issue that was going on with the lives of local citizens here in Shelby County. So numbers show that, 4 out of 5, they were dealing with evictions or knew somebody who had evictions, reported they had experienced some evictions. And as we see right here, 35% of respondents reported that they or someone that they were staying with actually received an eviction notice in 2020. So what we were able to do is the backside of this, after this research, we were able to meet with the Commons and provide some relative insights in regards to what the data told us. And what the data told us that, yes, people are doing a lot better than we expected going through this pandemic, but the issue still remains on hand that there are real-time issues with housing instability here in Shelby County. People are pretty resilient with these issues. And because of programs like the Eviction Settlement Fund, we were able to ward off a lot of these issues and problems. Having said that, there are still opportunities for us to engage with local government, state government, and public as we begin to push additional initiatives in regards to how we want to address some of these initiatives here in Shelby County. And what we recommended out of that was this list that's here on the right. And some of those issues that we have sat down and decided that we wanted to have advocacy for, we kind of whittled that list down to maybe like 2 high impact issues that we wanted to focus on. One being housing insecurity out of this list, and the 2 is provide programs and have accessibilities to people who are going through these issues with financial problems or issue with just social issues with regular, day-to-day issues as they go through their life here in Shelby County.
Thank you, Altonio. I appreciate the recommendations at the end. Does anyone have a question before we go on to our next presenter? Okay, Jessie, Partridge, I'll pass it off to you.
Hi, everyone. Am I able to? Yeah, okay. Share my screen. Can you all see my slides? Great. Thank you for having me. I'm Jessie. I'm the research manager at the Metropolitan Area Planning Council. We're the regional planning agency for Greater Boston. And I wanted to share some research that we've been doing into speculative investment in Greater Boston's housing market, which I think is aligned really well with Antonio's work. So curious to hear insights from your work on this. The questions we set out to answer with this research were first to define what is an investor, what is a housing market investor, what types of investors exist in our housing market. A lot of questions about how much, where, what types of properties, what types of investors, et cetera. And then most importantly, how can we relieve some of the pressure or better regulate these investments? And that's what I'd love to hear some feedback on today. So first, we defined investors as business buyers. So any purchase from an LLC was identified as a investment. But we also looked at buyers who purchased at least 3 residential properties, whether or not they were an LLC, or buyers who purchased $3 million or more worth of real estate, residential real estate over a 2-decade period from 2000 to 2020. We also included any buyer of an apartment building with 4 or more units as an investor, assuming that those are not going to be owner-occupied buildings. We also classified these investors by the size of their investment portfolio from small, medium, large up to institutional, which are those with the highest number of investments or the largest dollar value of investments. I don't have enough time to go into our findings there, but that was another element of the work. What we found was that in the 2 decades of our study period, 26% of all transactions in the region were purchased by an investor. And the rate sort of was growing over the time period. So this chart shows each line represents a real estate type. So the purple is 3 triple deckers or 3-family buildings, 2 families in blue, the regional average in this dotted blue line, and then single families and condos in green and yellow. Single families and condos make up 87% of all of our transactions in the region. So that's why the average trends so closely with them. But you can see that rate, especially in the larger buildings, trending up over the time period. This trend excludes foreclosures because the foreclosures happening around the housing crisis in 2008 really pushed the trend up. We also have a chart showing that, but I didn't have time to include that. We also see that investors, surprise, surprise, are more likely to purchase with cash. So in purple, we have the rate of cash buying of investors. In green, non-investor cash buying. The differential is biggest here for 2-family properties and smallest for condos, but investors' rates are much higher across the board. And those buying with cash are doing so at a discount. So the green line here shows mortgage purchases, the median sale price for homes with a mortgage, and the purple is the median sale price for cash purchases. The differential is really large. So at its biggest, it was about $125,000 difference back in 2010, but even 2019 was about $110,000 difference, and at its smallest, still around $90,000. So a really big differential between cash and non-cash purchases. We looked how investment was happening spatially in the region. We used our housing submarkets as a summary area. So you can see, I don't know how familiar folks are with the geography of our region, but this is Boston here. And you can see 40% of investments, the submarket 2 rate of investment was 40%. And submarket 2 is our subregion that is sort of high density, urban, lower prices. And this is also the submarket with the highest share of residents of color and areas with a lot of immigrants. So this is the area that saw the most sort of investor activity. We also were sort of surprised to see that our some of our highest cost suburban areas, that's submarket 5 here, had a large amount of investment, which might be, we still want to tease out exactly what's going on there, whether maybe some of the property sales were just so high that the $3 million mark that we had for investment was being captured there. So we also noticed that those institutional investors, those with the largest dollar or count of purchases, though they only make up 10% of all of the investment purchases, their investment rate was highest in this submarket 2 as well. So really large investors buying up a lot of the property in our low-cost urban sort of submarket, which is also the submarket that experiences the highest rates of housing instability. And we've seen from research a correlation with investor activity and evictions. So I think that is all part of the picture in that submarket. We also looked into flips, which I'll just go through really quickly. We defined a flip as a transaction within 2 years, a property being sold within 2 years of its most recent purchase. They're most frequently executed by large and institutional investors. Really strikingly, the price differential of the buy side and flip side is very, very large. So houses that are flipped are bought at a discount and then sold at a premium, especially for investors who are doing the flips as opposed to non-investors doing the flips. And then the sort of recommendations we have for policy or other interventions, we're still working through, and I'd love feedback. But the areas that we're looking at proposing policy interventions are around speculation, regulation. The city of Boston is already working on trying to pass a transfer fee for high cost real estate transactions. We've also seen a sort of, maybe explosion is overstating it a little bit, but a high increase in the number of properties that are being purchased and then sitting empty, which we assume to some degree have to do with investors buying properties to sit on them and resell them. And then we're also looking in areas of housing stability. So deeper foreclosure protections for owners and renters, right of first refusal that comes with financial support, so that folks who do want to purchase their home but don't have the resources have more of a chance. And also around housing opportunity. One idea was establishing a public bank that can provide credit for those who are typically excluded from home ownership opportunities. And that's it.
Thank you, Jessie. Does anyone have any questions or feedback, especially on the policy implications, as she had said?
No, I think this is great. I mean, we're doing something similar here in Memphis through BAM, Blight Authority of Memphis, and we're looking at tax sale, we're looking at evictions, we're looking at the housing stability here as it relates to this. So you're exactly correct. I mean, this is right on the same lane of what we're trying to do right here in Memphis. So my thought process is like one of the things you guys can kind of home in to, because we thought about what we do from a purpose standpoint of really kind of leverage this and kind of like closing the gap on it. Do you start with the wealth gap? We start with creating more job opportunities so they can afford housing, more affordable housing, better housing, and have a better livability index here in Memphis. And we kind of thought about that, you know, it probably started at an education standpoint with training, then providing job opportunities, then getting in the climate with the banks and these opportunities for us leveraging those opportunities for making these housings more affordable for citizens here so they can, so the key to closing that wealth gap is home ownership. You can tie that to that. You own your home, you have significant, you know, ability to like been a little bit more wealthy, and you can pass it on to your kids and your kids' kids and so on and so forth, that land aspect of it. But everything you touched in there is true. And then we have the same similar issue here with vacancies and things of nature when it comes to like conglomerates coming in, buying up these properties, sitting on them for a period of time, and they're waiting for some of this, these urban indexes of like gentrification when it comes to pushing these people on the inserts to the outskirts and moving them out and then coming back and rebranding these areas. So very good work, very exciting about what you guys are doing. Definitely something we're doing here as well.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And I will definitely try to be in touch with y'all because we're going to be doing some similar qualitative work like you've done. So I'd love to hear some insights.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great, I love to hear the collaboration. I'll pass it off to Sarah, our last presenter.
Hi everyone, let me share my screen. Can y'all see that?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So hi, thanks for having me today. My name is Sarah Diez. I'm a senior research analyst at the Kinder Institute for Urban Research at Rice University in Houston. Today, I'll be presenting the equity indicator work I've been doing with the city of Houston. So what is an equity indicator report? So this methodology was developed by the City University Institute, City University in New York Institute for State and Local Governance in partnership with the Rockefeller Foundation. 6 other cities have created equity indicator reports. Equity can be framed in many different ways: racial, ethnic, gender, income, sexual orientation, vet status. But the city of Houston decided to frame equity only through the racial ethnic lens. The city plans to use this report to establish equity priorities for each department. Okay. So the report creates an equity score for the city. So in the CUNY methodology, there are 4 levels. These reports are designed so that each indicator receives a score, and then topics receives a score, themes, and then finally the city. It all rolls up into one large theme score. So the city score is the average of the theme scores. The theme scores are the average of the topic scores in that theme, and the topic scores are the average of the indicator scores in that topic. So the indicator scores are basically the data we are measuring. Each indicator, you take the data and you rank it by race ethnicity. You take the highest and the least advantaged group, and you take a ratio of that, and you convert that ratio into a score using an algorithm developed by CUNY, and the score goes from 1 to 100, with 1 representing complete inequity and 100 representing complete equity. And the average of these indicator scores are what go into the topic, theme, and city scores. So the racial ethnic groups that are used as the most and least advantaged. Given Houston's diversity, they change for each indicator. So every time we look at the data set, oh, sorry, my lights in my office go off sometimes and they can't see me. So anyway, I look like I'm in like the witness protection program right now, but I'm still here. Anyway, like I was saying, the diversity of Houston makes each equity indicator ratio different. Based on the data itself. We don't go in and decide which one to use before. We look at the data and then decide. So some of our indicators will compare Black and Asian populations. Some might compare Hispanic and non-Hispanic white populations. We don't know until we went into the data itself and created these scores. And that's similar to what the other cities did as well. Most cities, however, were traditional kind of Black and white cities, but Houston, given its diversity, we changed quite a bit between each indicator. So our framework here, there are 7 themes. They pretty much follow similar to what the other cities did: economic opportunity, health, public safety, housing, infrastructure, access and inclusion. Each theme has 3 topics, and each topic has 3 indicators. So there's a total of 63 indicators in the report. The one section I want to point out is that the environmental and climate risk is unique to Houston's report. This is actually a bit more challenging to do because we realized that taking the average of these racial ethnic groups didn't really show who was being most effective. So we kind of tweaked the methodology here, and I looked at the California's analysis of race ethnicity for their Calo environmental screen scores. And we looked at the 90th percentile, who are the most impacted areas, and what are the race ethnicity composition of those to get the scores. So one of the more challenging things for this report was trying to find 63 data sets that you can standardize and compare using this methodology. And so the environmental one was a bit more challenging, and I think we found a good way to kind of capture what actually is happening, who are most impacted, given the various issues facing Houston. And that's one of the things I liked about this report, is that we could pick which indicators, which data sets meant the most to our city. And so for Houston, we have housing units and floodplains. We have proximity to industrial facilities. And so these kind of issues that may not, be as important in Oakland for flooding, we can do that and use it for our analysis. And so here we have the scores. So Houston's equity score for 2022 was 44. Economic opportunity, health, public safety were kind of on the lower side. It's not really surprising. These are pretty much in line with some of the other reports from other cities. However, our infrastructure score was much higher. But it's important to note that even though a high equity score doesn't necessarily mean a good outcome, it just means that there is good equity. So if you dig into the data for infrastructure, you'll notice that we had one of the ones we used was pavement conditions, and so the percent of city roads that were rated poor or very poor was pretty much uniform across the city at around 30 or 40%. So while infrastructure has a high equity score, overall, it's not that we have good infrastructure, we just have uniform infrastructure. And in addition to calculating the 2022 scores, we also calculated the 2021 score and reported equity change. But the problem with that is that sometimes the most advantaged group actually got worse. So the equity score would improve, but not in a good way. So there's a lot to like about this report. It gives the public a very easy number to look at and see the compounding effects of equity across the city, and see what areas could make improvements on, and which areas we could all benefit from. And so while I like it a lot, there are some methodological issues, such as a high equity score does not mean good outcomes for all. It just means similar outcomes for all. And here's an example of what economic opportunity looked like in the themes that we had. And so the breakdown, so you can see employment is more of an issue than the educational attainment. And then you can kind of break down the equity scores over here and see that business ownership got a 1, which is the lowest. On-time high school graduation was actually pretty high. So it kind of gives you a variation of what inside these themes, what are the high points and what are the low points. And here's an example of an equity indicator. For college degrees, we use the ratio of Asian and Hispanic adults, and the equity score for 2022 was 32. It was 28 the year before, and the equity change score was 4. So I think that's about it. Does anyone have any questions?
Perfect, thank you. I'm a little familiar with Tulsa, as I grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I know theirs has kind of declined in numbers. They've done it since 2018, so it's interesting to see across cities as well and in time. Was 2021 the first year that you all?
This is actually the first report. So we are doing a comparison from the previous year. So we're taking the 2022 data, and then, but all the data is considerably lagged. And so it's kind of hard to, so some of our data, like the police data, is from 2021 and 2020 and 2019, where like a lot of the ACS data is 2019, 2018. And so, but this is the first report for the city of Houston.
Does anyone have any questions for Sarah?
I do. Just what do you think? I mean, so these equity indicators are obviously really, they're good because they give one number, but they're also kind of blunt instruments. Do you feel like their advocacy groups okay, ready, or city agencies ready to like take some of these pieces up, or did you think the media is the right place to go, or sort of how do you get this either having an impactful message for folks or more strategic, feeding into more strategic things?
Yeah, that's a good question. So currently I finished all the data drafts for the reports and all the data files, and I gave them to the city last month, and now they're floating internally just to make sure that every department is aware of what we're putting out there. They're doing a lot of, they're doing a lot of, and I will say that honestly, I dealt with the police department, and they were really helpful because they had already kind of dug in this themselves. They have a transparency dashboard that has a lot of things. So we were able to kind of go beyond what they put out in that report. So I didn't want to just kind of re-report some of their data there. And so we went kind of a step further. And so that was kind of exciting. And And I was kind of impressed. A lot of different agencies kind of stepped up and said, well, we have data that we never thought about looking at it this way. Is it possible for you to use? And so like we have drainage data that necessarily had, which in City of Houston, that is very important. Like, where does people, even if you're outside the floodplains, you can still experience flooding during a natural disaster. And so it was, it's really interesting to see, there was kind of a big response inside the city. And so we're hoping to make it, they're doing a big push to make it hopefully engage with the public better. So.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That makes sense, and it's good if they're digesting internally, maybe they'll have some responses. Good responses when it finally comes out.
Yeah, I think I've been a lot of little meetings since then, kind of trying to explain why I use these indicators, which one we picked and where it's from and why the purpose and what, and a lot of times some of them actually had, they wanted to highlight some of the work they already did. So we actually have an arts grants indicator that they'd actually worked with Bloomberg to create a tool to make sure that they were doing a better job of distributing the funds equitable. And so there, we actually saw that, we did see the results of that using this methodology. So it's kind of verified some of the other programs. So it's kind of a chance to highlight their work and also not also pointing fingers saying which areas are bad too. So kind of trying to balance those two.
Thank you. I'll open it back up for general questions or discussions. I saw some chats from Jennifer and Noah doing some similar work. If anyone wanted to share anything.
I actually have another question for Sarah. We're doing some very similar work for the City of San Antonio's Department of, they changed it, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And we've already been looking at showing just the highest and lowest race ethnicity group on a chart. We worry though, because we're so non-diverse and the margins of error are so wide for half or more of our race ethnicity groups, that we're not really telling the truth. If we pick from two with the lowest or the highest that are very similar, how did y'all deal with that?
So for us, we have a larger population, so it was a little bit easier in that respect. For some of the indicators that we didn't have enough data for, we did try to just use the ones that we had the most data for. And so we kind of capped it in that respect. And I will say the score itself does just do the ratio, but we are adding, so I know in Tulsa's report, they just kind of put the number out there. They don't really kind of explain it. I am for each indicator including a paragraph underneath it that explains it further and breaks it down to other different groups as well, because there are some where, it was close between who was the highest and lowest, or like, ranking them didn't make much, it was really close. We don't want to discount other people's experiences by not including them in the analysis. So it was important to me to include a paragraph that goes further than just that number, because I think there is a lot of, additional context that is left out by just putting a number out there.
Jessie, I think I have a similar question that I have for Sarah for you. Like, are there, I remember Seema talking about like how connecting with the more housing advocacy folks at some of the more radical, both like folks that work really closely with the city or folks that are farther on the agitation side of the advocacy side. Because I think they probably would know a lot of your findings from the ground, right? But you have obviously having the real analysis is beneficial.
Yeah, I think some of the details of the findings weren't surprising. To me, the volume of investors was surprising and notable, that like the trend is just going up and up. So yeah, definitely connecting with folks on the ground around recommendations and interventions. I think we've already sort of some of the eviction research from like eviction moratorium in our region is really well connected and provides some good opportunities for collaboration.
And it would be great to see that. I don't know if you have it. I know this is a problem in DC data. If you had that same chart by number of units would look really different, right? Like if you have them, because of the multifamily, I think that the denominator was transactions, but if it was like selling an apartment building for that's 50 units or something like that would be really outsized.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah. So we defined buildings that were 4 or more units as investment, like by definition. So
Okay,
it would be 100%.
that makes sense. Just like segment them out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it's the like nuances of like what kinds of properties and where is what you can start targeting work.
Jessie, was the right of first refusal for proposal about tenants' right of first refusal?
Yeah.
Okay.
So if a property is being sold, we have some municipalities that have a right of first refusal. If it's going to be, if a multifamily is going to be turned into condos. And so we're working to see if there's a way to expand that and broaden it. But you know, even with that opportunity, a lot of folks just don't have the resources to make an offer on buying their unit. So what's really needed is funding support, which could be tied maybe to some of those transaction fees for the investment purchases.
Yeah, DC has a strong tenant right of first refusal program. They don't provide funding support, but they do provide technical assistance because the tenants have to form, a tenant council in their building, and so there's a lot of TA that has to go into getting those deals done. And we're actually going to be starting a study on the TOPA deals soon.
Yeah, it would be great to see more about your program.
But the tenants can assign their rights to a nonprofit developer.
I have a question for Altonio. I was wondering, in the survey, did the focusing on housing insecurity and social programs, is that because those are pointed out heavily by the respondents in the survey?
Yeah, so what we were able to divulge from the survey that some of the major issues, because we threw it out there, medical issues, financial, educational, was it, job placement, and also housing. So the respondents resoundingly pretty much yelled back, said we have an issue with housing here, which is kind of like a caveat of what we kind of knew, but with research, we go into with the process of with an open mind and hoping that we will learn something new, but we really didn't learn a whole lot new. It just reaffirmed what we already knew, that what the bigger issue was already. So we just kind of doubled down on that issue that made it more prevalent here. And what we were able to do with this, and go back to the city, county, and NPI, was able to leverage the state and national government for more money. So the first iteration, 1.7 million, they ended up getting 28 million during the second iteration. And then I think they ended up giving something close to 30 some million. So we're on a third iteration of that program. So pretty happy about that. And just one little cog in the wheel. So, we'll focus on that, double down on that, and hopefully we can focus on some of these other issues as we begin to turn the page and push some of these critical issues that are needed here in Shelby County.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then they mentioned in the survey as well that a lot of that was due to employment issues. I was wondering, did they go further into that as far as whether it was due to a reduction in hours or not enough jobs offering a livable wage? Because a lot of the narrative we know is oh, there's just not enough people who are willing to do the work. And we know that that's not true.
Yeah, and we know that's not true, so, livable wage, that conversation, when you bring it up, it's almost a dare. And I really don't care. I'm a starch advocate for things that are going on in our communities, but some politicians, they hate that word. When you talk about raising minimum wages, that's going to cost business owners more money. They don't really see the livability aspects of it as it's tied to other things in our social ecosystem, with crime rates, the ability to provide, you know, more educational for your families, food on the table, things of that nature. They don't really look at it long-term, big picture. They just see it as a cost estimate or impact on their business and stuff like that. So it's a money thing. So now navigating that conversation from the standpoint of, if you do this, you will make the world around us better. It's going to be a constant song that we push on play and repeat as we go through the process. And that's what we're going through right here. So, you know, right on. So it's definitely about livable wages. It's definitely about jobs. It's definitely about training, but also the people got to have the want to, you know, to go out there and go get those jobs, you know, as we come out of this recession, definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you all, and that puts us right at time. I appreciate all our presenters today and everyone who came, and congrats to our award winners as well. Thank you all. Hope to see you soon.
Thanks, Elizabeth, and everybody.
Thank you.